I told you there would be a moment. Well, guess what? The moment's here. The fight is coming. Let's go!
Boxing King Media in association with Boxer. Paul Smith in Saudi again. We was here for the AJ Usyk fight. We're here again now for Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. I never thought I'd see Paul Smith here for Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, but you're not here for that.
I've had to be telling a lot of people for all week about that. Like, where you going? I'm going to Saudi for the fight, and you're going to watch Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. And I manage Zizo, who you spoke to, and he's on the undercard. He's a Saudi fighter. But it's good to be back here. I love it in Saudi now. It's great. I remember the first time I came, it was still quite stringent and strict with a lot of the laws and the ways and everything else. And then I used to speak to Zizo, and he'd tell me, like, it's changed. It's getting a lot more progressive and inclusive and relaxed. And I came back for the fight you mentioned then when Callum was on the undercard, and I loved it. And this time's been brilliant. First time in Riyadh this time, and it's someplace I love it here. It's really good.
Obviously, most boxing fans will know that you're managing fighters as well. And just explain to me, I know Zizo's kind of told me, but what made you sign up this kid from Saudi but based in LA, trains with Buddy?
Yeah, exactly. The last bit, probably the first thing that made me want to manage him when I was approached to do it. He's trained by Buddy McGee. Buddy's got faith in him. He's a lovely kid, and I've spent time around him now when he's in the gym with my brother Callum, with Buddy. He comes to Liverpool to finish off his camps or to start his camps if Buddy's there with Callum. And he's a pleasure to have around the gym. The lads all enjoy having him in the gym and support him when he's sparring, and he's got good sparring in the gym. He's a good grafter, he works hard. But it's like anything, when he was first mentioned to me, I helped Buddy in the corner on his first fight. I just wanted the kid to do well for himself. He's a nice kid, a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And then it was approached to over management to me, and it was an easy decision, to be honest with you, because of how nice a kid he is. And I think I'd be like that if I'm training fighters as well, which I'll be doing, or when the right one comes along. You can't exactly just go and put an advert in the window. I'm now a boxing trainer. I can train people, no problem. I'm going to be training people probably if and when I'm asked, but you've got to wait for that invite or that offer rather than go and approach fighters. I can't stand people who try and poach other people's fighters, or getting other fighters' ears when they're managed by someone else or trained by someone else. But you've just got to sort of take your time and it'll come to you. But with Zizo, it was an easy yes, because of everything that's going on in his life outside the ring, the Saudi connection, the Saudi link-up. He's a Saudi fighter, and he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He's going to get opportunities over here to fight, and if he takes them opportunities with both hands, learns on the job because he hasn't had much amateur experience, then it could be a long, successful, good road for him to the pro game. He's going to have bumps in the road, but everyone does. But he's got the right people around him, and the right setup, and the right backing, more importantly, from his home nation, from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to get him there.
Yeah, you're not a stranger to pressure. Being the lead Saudi fighter, he's going to be, I think, third from last on, he was telling me. So there's going to be a big crowd in there, a lot of pressure. For a 22-year-old in his second fight going up against a kid that's 3-1, it's a lot of pressure. Can he deal with that from what you've seen?
I think he can. I think he works at it every day on dealing with pressure. He's got people he speaks to. He's got his coach around him. He's got his friends, and he's got us and the lads in the gym when he's in Liverpool, and Callum in the gym when he's over in LA or Florida with Buddy. And he has to take it on his shoulder. If he doesn't take it, he's not gonna make anything of himself. He has to handle the pressure, learn how to handle it. And it is a lot of pressure. We don't understand, probably as Westerners, when we're over in the UK or in the States or Europe. It's different here, and they haven't got many fighters, and they haven't got many people who can actually perform on the level of the European and American fighters, and that's what they want. Saudi, they would love to have their own fighter that can hold their own with the Americans and the Europeans, who are or the South Americans, should I say, who are known probably as some of the best in the world. And I'm including the likes of Russia, Kazakhstan, and everywhere else in the European bit. Sorry, I know it's Asia, but he's got a lot of expectations about him just because he's a professional fighter from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but he's got to enjoy it along the way, you know what I mean, and handle that pressure. And I keep trying to play it down to him and say, look, it's more a privilege than pressure. You're on just before the co-main event on a big card like this, And there's kids out there who would give anything to be in that position. They're thrown out at 6 o'clock in the afternoon and then finished, done and dusted, and thrown out the arena, can't even stay and watch the fight. You know, you're a big name on this show and a big name in Saudi because you're the only big Saudi fighter on the main card. And so you need to relish it, enjoy it, and learn to use it to your advantage rather than let that pressure get to you.
That's pretty good advice. I like what you said there. It's a privilege and not pressure. That's quite a good way of kind of summarising it. And hopefully he proves you right and see where his journey goes. With regards to the main event, I've spoke to a lot of boxing people in the UK recently. A lot of them are picking Jake Paul. I've not spoken to you about it before. So from what you've seen from both guys, how do you think it'll unfold?
I can see why people are picking Jake Paul. And to be honest with you, I to and fro myself when the fight was made, thinking, you know what, I can just see it now, just because of the type of person Jake Paul is. He's one of them people where he's going to say it that much that he's going to win, and it might just happen because he's just, you know, he's got that jamminess in him. He's got that bit of luck on his side. He's done fantastic for his age and for what he's done and achieved in his life. Again, you know, it's not really the average person on the street's cup of tea, but he's learned how to use what he's got and not manipulate something in a bad way. But if I start a YouTube channel and I start making 50 grand a month, you're going to pat me on the back and say, well done, Paul, that's, you know, you've used your brain. And other people around me are going to say, tell you what, you're doing great. He's manipulating it and utilising something that he's got to make money out of another sport. And bear in mind, he's probably making more on his YouTube channel than he will for boxing, and he's earning very well from the boxing. But you can't sort of hate on that or be bitter about that. He's also making other fighters good money. Tommy Fury would never earn the money that he's getting on Sunday night against anyone else that he's going to get for fighting Jake Paul, even with the Love Island stuff and the reality stuff, even being Tyson's brother. And I think all that added in a roundabout way is why we're probably thinking this might be close. But for me, I've said for ages, a good boxer will beat Jake Paul easily and should beat Jake Paul easily. And I think Tommy Fury isn't as bad as everyone's making out. And I think on the night he'll get it right, and I think he'll beat him and probably beat him well and probably stop him or knock him out. Again, I can't say middle rounds because it's only 8 rounds, you know, I reckon 3, 4, 5 or something like that. But again, you know, I seen Carl Froch calling Jake Paul out, and I've said this to everyone that I listen, and I might be downplaying Jake Paul and not disrespecting him by any way. I've said at the start of this he has me respect, that's why I said it, but I haven't been in the gym properly for 5 years, and I think I could beat him in 12 weeks' time with a bit of training. I think Carl Froch, after calling him out, could beat him with one hand. You know, if you told me I had 12 weeks to train for Jake Paul and I could only use my left hand, I'd still be very, very, very confident of beating him after 5 years out. Carl Froch should wipe the floor with him. You know, I think he'd beat him with one hand, and I can't say I'm not slagging him off because it is sort of slagging Jake Paul off saying that, but he's not a boxer. It's okay beating YouTubers and basketball players and MMA fighters. Tyrone Woodley would destroy me, Carl Froch and Jake Paul in a cage, but in a boxing ring he shouldn't last any longer than 2 rounds with 2 professional boxers or former boxers, and Jake Paul managed to knock him out, which was, you know, nothing to phone home about. But
Surely you don't believe Carl? Don't you think he's just playing along with the joke?
if I'm Carl Froch sitting there and I can make myself £5 million for fighting Jake Paul, then I'd go and do it myself. People keep asking me, would you fight Jake Paul for £5 million? And I say the same answer every time. I'd fight Tyson Fury out in Joshua in the car park for £5 million. I'd shake both their hands before and after. The worst that's going to happen is I could get knocked out by him, but I could get knocked out by Jake Paul. I could get knocked out by anyone I fight or anyone I have a boxing match or a spar with. So people don't understand the magnitude of what they're asking. It's £5 million. There's not a man on the face of the planet that I wouldn't fight. You know, and I'd like to think everyone would be the same. So Carl Froch's doing what he's doing. If it wasn't so cringy and if Jake Paul actually knew who I was, I'd do it myself. But you know, Carl Froch has got the name and he's been a former multiple world champion. That's why he's doing it. And I think Tommy Fury will deal with it, but if he doesn't, I think Carl Froch certainly will deal with it.
Be interesting if that ever really happens, to be honest with you. I just want to speak to you about your brother, Liam Smith. Last, I think Valentine's Day it was, Chris Eubank Jr. chose that day to activate his rematch clause. To your knowledge, has anything happened? Has Liam been given dates? And that rematch clause, how strict is it? Has it got to happen? Is there any way out of it?
I haven't got a clue. I don't ask, and I don't have privilege to look at contracts or what's happened in it, but I keep seeing people saying, like, you know, activated the clause. He's basically just said to his lawyer, get me the rematch. You know, the rematch is in the contract anyway. You sign that for the first fight. that's standard in boxing. You know, it's not like a clause where you have to say. You just have to say, I want the rematch. If you want the rematch, then your opponent is told, and then you then negotiate on paces, venues, undercard, and all that malarkey to make it happen. But Liam has to also agree to the rematch, you know, and Liam won't have agreed anything yet, won't have agreed finances yet, won't have agreed, you know, weight, where it's going to be. I keep seeing people, oh, Liam's going to make him boil down to 157 or 154 now. Liam's in the driving seat. Liam can do whatever he wants. Liam's a light middleweight. Liam's a 154 fighter who stepped up to 160 and knocked him out. So if Liam now does want to say, well, you know what, I want this fight at 157 or 158 now because you're going to be better, and you're willing to go to 157 for Conor Benn, so if you want the rematch, we'll have it there. Liam's well within his rights to do so.
Is that in the contract? Like, how would they even negotiate that?
Again, I don't know, but for me, as I said to my brothers or to someone else, you know, you'd look like a bit of a shitbag making him get down to 157 or 158 when you just flattened him at 160 anyway. So it was easy enough to do it there. You can do it again and beat him again, or he can do it again. But Liam's his own man. Liam will make his own decisions, and I'm sure we'll find out in due course whether the fight's actually going to happen, whether it's made, whether it's finalised, or whether they find a venue for it. I'd absolutely love it to be at Anfield if it's happening, but it's all on Liam, is what I'm saying. You know, Liam's in the driving seat now. It's Smith Eubank this time, and it's Liam's the A side this time.
I spoke to Dominic Ingle, and he was quite critical of Eubank's tactics, trying to box like Roy Jones's, as he described it, with that upper body movement, and he said he just looked like a robot, and he felt if he's got any chance, he still favours Liam being the favourite, but he says if he's got any chance, he has to fight the way he kind of started his career, which is hands down, go forward. If it fight plays out like that, do you give him more of a chance? Does he pose more of a threat to Liam, do you think?
No, and I said this in the build-up, and anyone can find interviews from Fight Week or from the first press conference that they had down in London when I went down with Liam and I did a few interviews. Anyone that's asked me, I've said the same thing. For Eubank to fight the way he does, when was the last time anyone's seen Eubank work for 12 rounds? And I've asked everyone this question, because he doesn't do it, he can't do it. He hasn't got 12 rounds in him. Billy Joe, he did nothing for the first 6. He did a lot of work for the last 6 and done really well towards the end. George Groves, again, not working for 12 rounds. Liam Smith, my brother, said himself, if I drop someone 4 times, they're not seeing the final bell. Liam Williams was dropped 4 times and still seeing the final bell because he hasn't got it in the engine to put his foot down and maintain a pace for 12 rounds or 10 rounds, whatever it is. And I just don't think he's got 12 rounds in him anymore. And the reason why I said that, which is still yet to be unproven, is because he doesn't do it in the gym. He won't spar hard in the gym. You know, there's little clips we've seen where he's sparred in a Dior coat and all that, but you're talking 2 rounds, 3 rounds at best. You know, you've got to spar. If you're going to fight hard for 12 rounds, you've got to spar hard, and I don't think he's doing that, and I know Liam's doing that. If you want to go there in the ring, you've got to go there in the gym, and I don't think he's being pushed in the gym. I don't think he's pushing himself in the gym, and you know, he's the boss, and the coach has to be the boss, and the people around you need to push you through things, and you've got to be pushed or push yourself, and he's doing neither. So it's okay saying the tactics. He should come out and fight the way he does. If he comes out and tries to fight Liam the way he wants to fight anyone else, or the way he used to fight, he's only got 6 rounds in him anyway, so Liam will come on strong for the last 6 and stop him. If he wants to, he's got to come out and try and box, because he's got to maintain his energy and conserve his energy. He's got to keep something in the tank for when he has to fight. And the first 2 rounds, not much in him. I thought Liam got 1. I thought the second was probably close. The 3rd round, Eubank had a really good round. And the first thing I said to Liam when I got a chance to speak after his coaches were talking to him, I don't like interrupting anyone. Just at the end, I'll just say one little thing if I can, if I need to, or if I feel like I have to say something because it's my brother. I said, look, that's good. You've made him work. Just don't take so many next round. Keep him punching. You want to keep Eubank working because he hasn't got 12 rounds in him. The next round, the inevitable happened, what happened. And it was a little bit earlier than expected, but I did expect that Liam could hurt him, but I didn't think it'd be that early, and I'm not sure anyone did. But to answer your question in a long roundabout way, like, no, I don't think whatever he does, I don't think he can beat Liam whatever he does unless he lands a shot and Liam's chin was to go the way Eubank's did, which I can't see happening. Liam's tough as anything. I've hit Liam myself. Callum's hit Liam's with big shots. I've watched Liam being hit by some of the biggest punches in his division, and he takes them. That's where I was frustrated and giggling and laughing when people were saying, or Eubank was saying, you know, you haven't been with anyone of my calibre. You know, he's been in with the best, and certainly with people who hit harder than Eubank. So no, I don't think if he comes out and tries to fight Liam and make it a rough fight, then Liam will weather the storm and come on strong and have more in the tank because he's got 12 rounds in him. I don't think Eubank has. I think if he tries to outbox him then it'll be another repeat performance. He'll leave himself open and leave his chin high. He'll be open to the shots that Liam was working on, and I don't think he's technically good enough as a boxer to outbox Liam, as Liam kept saying.
Interesting that, but what I will say, I spoke to you, I think, fight week for that first fight, and you was pretty neutral, and to be fair, I think you kind of called it as a bit of like a 55, 45, 50 fight, but obviously now you've seen him fight, you can probably make a better judgment.
I said before
Because
the
people
fight.
are commenting, praising in the comments, that's why I remembered it.
Yeah. No, I said before the fight, it is a 50-50 fight, because I did think it was going to be a fight of two halves. I thought he's going to have to box for 6 rounds and he'll try and go for it for 6 rounds, because I know after watching him for so long, I don't think he has 12 rounds in him. Now, if he has got 12 rounds in him, it's a different fight. Then you got to get involved more. It's a different type of fight. But he can't come out and fight for 12 rounds, and he can't come out and outbox for 12 rounds. Because if he tries to outbox Liam for 12 rounds, after 5 or 6 rounds, he's going to be 5 or 6 rounds down. So he's going to have to do something different to change it up. He hasn't got the boxing ability to stand on the back foot and outbox Liam for 12 rounds. And again, I'm not saying it's Roy Jones, and that's where people probably get mixed up saying, oh, he's trying to box like Roy Jones. He's just trying to box. He's probably copying Roy Jones and mimicking some things he does. But he's trying to be a boxer. When he's not a boxer, he's a fighter. Eubank is a good fighter. He's not a good boxer. And I think the majority of the boxing industry and the people in it will know that.
Did you see your brother's a fighter as well?
Box fighter. He's front foot fighter, yeah. He's not going to stand off and try and outbox you, but if you try and hit him and he wants to stand on the back foot, he can do it, because he's had that pedigree, he's had that upbringing. He's been in the schoolboys, he's won the junior ABAs, he's won the NABCs, he's won the senior ABAs, he's boxed for England, he's gone through the card, and he's got very, very good fundamentals from the Tons of Boxing Club and the coaches that he's worked with since. He's a very clever boxer, so he can box if he has to, but he chooses to pressure fight, educated pressure. He's a box puncher, you know, and he fights that way. Again, all of us, none of us are really just boxers. We've got a bit of both.
I'll tell you something that I picked up about Liam a long time ago. I don't think anyone's ever noticed it, but the way he throws the left uppercut, there's only Mike Tyson I've seen throw it like that, because where he can bend his hips left, right, and then throw it from a crazy angle where it lands, and it's coming from an angle where you can't even see it. Yeah. Do you agree?
He throws shots like a Mexican. He throws shots really well, but you know, if Liam's attitude is always, if he can hit you with one, he'll hit you with 3 or 4, you know, and that's what happens in the fight. And some of the bullshit I've seen of people talking about, like the stoppage or the daft elbow or the fact that everything else happened. Eubank touches down before the elbow lands. Eubank's hurt and drops, and his right glove touches the floor before the alleged elbow touched him, which, again, as I've said, and it's just basic physics. If you have the opportunity to hit someone from that position that they were in, and you can pause it and rewind it, do whatever you want. If you have the opportunity to hit someone with an elbow that way or hit them with a hook that way, you're throwing the punch every single day of the week, every single time. You're never going to throw that elbow. You're not going to hurt anyone with that. You're going to hurt your arm rather than hurt him. They just can't accept the fact that what we were saying, people who sort of knew the boxing was saying, has happened. He's beat Eubank, albeit a little bit easier than we all expected. But a good chin's only a good chin until it goes. And if you get it with the perfect shot, it doesn't matter how good your chin is. You're going to ask questions of your legs, or your functions are going to be affected, obviously, and they certainly were. But he was gone, and I think he was asleep before he hit the floor. I think hitting the floor actually woke him up. I spoke with Steve Bunce about that when I got here this week, and he said I agree with it. You know, he was hurt, and because he's never been hurt, and because the ego, he was trying to get up as quick as he could, rather than taking a knee, rather than weathering the storm, rather than just basically understanding that, you know what, I am human, even though I try and play this persona that I'm not. I've been hurt, and I now need to do what I've watched all them top fighters do when they're hurt, and recover properly, get up right, show that I'm not hurt, rather than the bravado and the ego of trying to get up as quick as he can because he doesn't want to be seen on his knee. But, you know, there's a lot of people talking about the fight and in the wrong way, rather than just giving Liam the credit for what he's done. And he did great. He trained hard. He got himself in brilliant shape. He's moved up to middleweight. He's stepped up a weight limit to fight someone who everyone was saying was better than him, was going to wipe him out, whatever else, and he's knocked him out, and now he's in the driving seat for the rematch.
Definitely. So, last thing I want to speak to you about, Paul, is the obvious case with the WBC and Conor Benn, which met its conclusion a couple of days ago. The initial statement that the WBC released basically read that they've found no conclusive evidence, and that was a key wording that they put in that. And then with regards to, because I think Conor appealed, obviously the contamination of eggs, 34 eggs a week, I think that was quoted, and he also suggested that the samples weren't tested properly, but the WBC have accepted that samples were done correctly. However, there's no conclusive evidence to suggest that he's deliberately took steroids. What was your initial thoughts when you read that WBC statement?
I didn't, to be honest with you. I just read all the tweets talking about the statement and quoting it, and some of the jokes were seen were hysterical. I've said for ages I like Conor Benn. I think he's a really nice kid. I've always had a lot of time for him. But I think that's a load of just nonsense, the fact that the WBC is saying they can't find any conclusive evidence. If it's in your system, it's in your system. And the science and the facts behind the fact that it might have came from eggs isn't conclusive for me. It's not. That I'm not accepting that. And when I saw Conor Benn tweeting about, like, you know, the apology is going to be greater than the insult or whatever it was, or, you know, the truth's going to come out. If that's the truth, then it's a big, massive, underwhelming no for everyone, because I eat more than 34 eggs a week. I own a cafe now. I have my breakfast there most days, and I love eggs. I love scrambled egg, I love poached egg, I love fried egg. I've been brought up on eggs. I used to have bowls of coca noodles in Liverpool, which are a famous Scouse staple dish. Coca noodles with boiled eggs cut up in it, or tins of tuna cut up in it and mashed up. But eggs are the one, and I love eggs. I've had chickens in my garden. I used to have fresh eggs every day. To eat enough eggs, the amount of eggs you'd need to eat to have them limits showing up, I don't think is only 34. 34 is probably less than 6 a day, isn't it? You know what I mean? That's probably around about 5 a day, so not for me, no. I'm disappointed in it. I think whoever fails tests like that, if there's no real scientific concrete evidence on the fact that it could have got in your system that way, if it's in your system, it's in your system. You're in control of what you put in your food, and if it's blaming contaminated meat or contaminated eggs or something like that, it just doesn't sit well with me. But each to their own, you know, as I've said time and time again, there's no room in boxing for drug cheats. There's no room in boxing for people who want to take testosterone and boost the levels up to what they should be as a 35-year-old man when you're 23, because the 23-year-old man's producing more testosterone than you. So you can then go and get a legal booster from your doctor to boost your levels up to the same as him. But you're not 23, you're 33, so there's a reason why boxing is a young man's sport, because you don't produce as much testosterone when you're in your 30s than you do in your 20s. But again, I remember a few of the lads who I know have took testosterone before, and they were tweeting and posting about it, saying everyone that takes it knows I've never took it in my life, not even legally or illegal, I've never needed it. And to say that you take that drug, clomiphene or clofamine or whatever it's called, after a cycle of testosterone. So the fact that that's being mentioned alongside everything else, and the doctor, the one who was contacting the fighters, offering the services and all that, you know, it just doesn't add up to me. And it's unfortunate, as I said, because he's a lovely kid, Conor Benn, and I do get on with him, but you can't sort of beat around the bush when it comes to it. If you're asked about it, you've got to tell the truth about it. And no, I don't really agree with what's being said, and it'll be interesting to see if he actually fights again, especially in Britain. But you know, he's trying to make his comeback. I'm sure people out there will fight him for the money, but I don't think anyone in Britain will probably want to fight him because of the ramifications of the test that he's had.
I did a couple of polls in the last few days, and the overwhelming, I think 75% plus on Twitter and Instagram felt that the WBC made the wrong decision. I read, obviously been checking the tweets, and somebody's tweeted a few articles from last year where Conor's talked about his diets, etc., where, you know, there's a suggestion, I think I read somewhere, that occasionally eats omelettes. Did you read them?
I saw, again, just a couple of tweets posted onto my timeline. I don't read into much like that on social media. I scroll through the people I'm following, and that's it. I'll read any comments what come my way if I can. But I remember years ago, my dad's a bodybuilder. He was a bodybuilder, the arm, and one of his mates laughs and jokes with me now and says years ago their protein drinks were 6 or 8 eggs in a blender with a big slab of ice cream and a bit of milk topped up, and you blend it all up and drink it, and that was your protein drink because you're getting the protein. So they should have all had that in their system back then if it was available at that time, because they were eating or drinking 60 odd eggs a week probably. It just I was expecting when he was saying, the truth will come out, that it was a contamination at the lab, or that it was something that's being put inside a protein drink or some ingredient on an over-the-counter drink, which I've seen boxers unfortunately fail by accident. Remember Tony Dodson had one of them. He bought an over-the-counter energy drink or pre-workout drink, and it had something in it that was banned, and he learned the hard way, unfortunately. But was he a cheat? No, it's just accidental. But he served his ban and he came back. This isn't neither of them. There is no sort of, there's no way of ruling it out that it wasn't that, and I think that's unfortunately what's happened, rather than just taking it on the chin and seeing how it goes. But we need bigger deterrence in boxing, I think, and we need bigger. There is no real sort of sanctioning body that can control the drugs. 1 minute it's VADA, 1 minute it's UCAD, 1 minute it's other companies that are testing. The boards are okay but one, but not the other. The WBC are okay with one, but the other. There should just be one universal drug testing company, or they can band together or something, or they can employ, or every governing body employs the same one, so therefore every sanctioning body has to employs the same one. So the governing bodies, as in the Boxing Board of Control, the California State Commission, New York State, all the states, all the Middle East boxing, they all then have to go to the exact same one, because that's what the governing bodies are using. Then that's an easier way around it. Then you can't fail a test on that, and then they'll be okay with it because it's not their test there. Some of them are more stringent than others. I think UCAD are probably the best ones out there.
Is it worth mentioning?
But he hasn't failed a UCAD test. That's what the most confusing part of this is. He's passed his UCAD test and he's failed a VADA one, hasn't he? Which is what the WBC don't recognise or do recognise, and the board don't recognise VADA. It's just all confusing. The people at the boxing board, the stewards, the general secretary, so many of them are very, very clever, learned, intelligent people, whatever you want to call them. KCs, not QCs now. KCs, barristers, doctors. They've got the best of everyone there, so they should be able to deal with this in the right way. But whether they do or not, you just never know. It's just it's a bit of a shit show, I think.
It's worth mentioning that obviously Canelo, he was based around similar sort of contamination of meat, and I think Oscar Valdez had a similar sort of story. So it's worth mentioning it's not the first time the WBC have cleared someone because of contamination. They have done it before. There's history of it. Do you think it's highlighted more for us as Brits because obviously Conor's a British fighter, he's a big name? Do you think maybe we're maybe scrutinising him more because of that?
Possibly, and he certainly was guilty till proven innocent, wasn't he, when it come out, and I was asked about it a lot when it first come out, and I didn't really comment on it. I didn't want to jump in with 2 feet and condemn the kid before the evidence was found, and I didn't want to back him in case you are backing him and then all of a sudden it was clear as day he was cheating. But that's what it is, it's cheating at the end of the day, and if that's the case, then it needed
the same as what you just said there. He was quiet, but you've seen what he's done in the last few days.
Yeah, now I've seen the so-called sort of evidence, proof, and clearing of it, and I'm not buying it. It's I have kept quiet over it because, as I said, I like the kid, and there's nothing worse than when something goes wrong and it's not your fault and people dive in with 2 feet and automatically you're condemned. I've seen it happen with loads of things, and my brothers were out in town one night and a lad with a white t-shirt on punches another lad who was about 6'4" and off by where we used to live, and because he had a white t-shirt on, my brother Stephen's gone out and the police have grabbed my brother Stephen, tried to arrest him for it, and Liam's gone to help Stephen. He got arrested. It was on the front page of the Echo the next day, the newspaper in Liverpool. Smith brothers arrested for assault in the gay quarter. It was like, they hadn't done a thing. Someone punched someone, they weren't even there, they've run outside the club. Stephen's been arrested because he had the same clothes on. Liam got arrested because he was defending Liam, and people weighed in on it. Gay bashing, assaulting normal people off the street, and you're a professional boxer, this, that, and they hadn't literally done a thing wrong. They'd done nothing wrong whatsoever, and it was clear that they were released the next day. There was a statement by the newspapers saying that they didn't do anything, and people don't remember that, they just remember that front page article. But that's on a different matter, obviously. But with this, I did just think, say to her, we'll see what happens with the full results first, but if he's failed 2 tests, then there's no smoke without fire. But he could have been taking something else. I remember when I was boxing for England, We didn't have GB apart from the Olympics when I was boxing for England. That's how old I am. And on the England squads, we had a doctor there, and every single thing you had to take, they test it on the site first. Well, like, you can't take that because that's got this in. You can't eat that because that's got this in. We couldn't have a Vicks nasal spray because it's sort of something similar to cocaine, apparently, or something else. We couldn't take certain type of painkillers because they had something else in what was mixed with something like morphine or some form of opiate, so we couldn't take them. But you know before it. So the fact that these things are showing up in contaminated meat or eggs, then these are professional athletes making £1 million fights, and they're buying the meat from where, a supermarket or somewhere. If there's a possibility that you might fail a drug test and be banned for eating a certain type of meat or egg, then get your meat or eggs from somewhere else where it's grass fed and natural and organic. It's not hard to do.
And the last question I've got on for you on that is, I was going to talk to you about what Victor Conte has been tweeting as well, but I think we've kind of covered it because you've talked about the tweets. The last question is, based on what you know now, based on what Conor's kind of...
What did Victor Conte say?
He's basically been tweeting that the WBC have made a mockery of this, and he quoted something from their website saying, strict liability is the underlying principle of anti-doping. Athletes are solely responsible for any prohibited substance found in the system, whether there was an intention to cheat or not. And then the other one is the WBC made a mockery of anti-doping in boxing with the outrageous overeating eggs ruling in the Conor Benn case. This tops the insane Oscar Valdez herbal tea case.
Yeah, no, he knows his stuff more than anyone when it comes to this, so he's had a lot of speculation around him himself.
For fans that don't know, he served time in prison for distributing drugs to athletes in 2005.
Yep. It's like, there's doctors that have approached us in the past or approached me, I'm a doctor, I can help you and your brothers, or, I can do this and that. What do we need the doctor for? If I've got a problem and I'm sick, I'll go to the doctor. If we get injured, we go to the physio, or we go to the chiropractor, and we've got good people around us for that. We've always been very lucky having Mike Hayton, who's the best hand surgeon in the country, on the end of the phone for anything medically like that, and he's helped us all the time, and he's a good man, and we trust him 100%, but never would I say to him, do you do testosterone, or can you give me something that'll boost me in training or something? It's not his job, and I'd like to think he'd fall out with us if we did ask him that. But some of them must be doing it because there's so many of them in boxing that are failing tests for things that you can only be prescribed by a doctor that should not be in your system. And again, I'm not buying the eggs thing or everything else, but you're responsible. That's why I said before about like the nasal spray or the certain things that you can't have. I injured my back once. I went into Liverpool Football Club, and the physio and the doctor in there really looked after me. And everything that he gave me, he Googled, from paracetamol. He checked the boxing site, the boxing drug site, because they have a different one for football. They're okay, they're anti-inflammatories, you can take them. They're fine, they're not on the ban list, and there's like paracetamol, you can take them, they're fine obviously. And hope your injury gets better, you should be okay now. But that's a doctor Googling a basic anti-inflammatory tablet and paracetamol just to make sure, because the last thing he'd want was to give me something that I would go away and take, and then I fail a test because he knows it's me that will face the consequences, because I'm the boxer, because I'm the man and the grown man that's put it in my mouth. So again, back to what I said, if there's a possibility of your beef or your eggs being contaminated with a performance-enhancing drug, then it should be tough, because you've vet it knowingly. If you know that you're eating that and there's a possibility that you can fail a test, you shouldn't eat it. You should stop eating it, or buy your beef somewhere else where it's organic, or, as I say, your eggs are organic, and the chickens haven't been jabbed with anything with clomiphene in. If the chicken hasn't been jabbed with it, it can't go to the egg can't go to you. So it's a case of then, as you say, I think that's what the boxing board stance will be as well. Well, you shouldn't have vet them. If there's a possibility of it, you're responsible for what goes in and out your body.
I would suspect, obviously we don't know it yet, I would suspect that there's fan proof that these eggs that he's been buying would have been injected with clomiphene, surely, because the WBC would have asked for that. It's a common sense question, but whether we find out or not, do you think that'll ever be made public?
No, I don't think anything will be found out on it. That's it. Again, I don't know enough about the case, but I don't know enough, and I don't really want to know enough. I'm not interested in it. It's a kick in the balls for boxing, I think, and there's been plenty of them recently with drug tests and everything else. It's just, we as fans would love to have seen a really conclusive explanation on it. You know what happened. He went in the doctors. He had an operation on his hand a few weeks earlier or something, and you know, just by mistake, some of that has creeped into a contaminated vial of antibiotics or something. You know, something like that would make a lot more. Okay. You know what? That's a good explanation, and they can back that up by saying, "There's the stuff what he got. There's the doctor who administered it, and it's a simple explanation." And you know what? We can let that one go. As boxing fans, as boxing commissions, he can fight again because it definitely wasn't him. But it isn't, and there isn't any of that, and it's 2 failed tests, 2 different times, obviously. And then the explanation is, I ate too many eggs and I eat a lot of eggs, and you know that's just not going to sit well with many people. But that's why I don't really pay attention to it much and don't let it bother me or don't let it take up too much of my time, which this certainly has took a lot of time by talking about it. But you've asked questions, I'm answering them, and I'm giving my opinion on it. But yeah, you know, it's just an unfortunate mess at the moment, and boxing needs to sort itself out.
I really appreciate your time, Paul. One word answer for you. To know what you know, what Conor said, what the WBC have said, and now that you know all the full facts, do you believe that he deliberately took something, or do you think he's innocent and still struggling to prove it?
Again, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know the lad well enough. I know him as well as I know him, and as I've said time and time again, and he mightn't like what I'm saying, but he's a nice kid. And I've always got on with him. I admired his dad so much growing up. Lucky enough to meet his dad and to have his dad, have conversations with his dad. But I saw an article yesterday, and I've just said then before, boxing's got to sort itself out. And it's not technically boxing. I've just actually undermined myself and contradicted myself. I saw an article of a reporter, and a national reporter, a sports reporter, and he said, you know, boxing's something again. And it's like, how's it boxing's fault? 99.9% of boxers have never took a performance-enhancing drug in their life. 99.9% of boxers have never been accused of eating contaminated stuff to fail drug tests, because 99.9% of the boxers pass the tests. I boxed for 15 years as a professional, never took one performance-enhancing drug or one recreational drug in all that time, ever. And I'll never fail a test. My brothers never failed a test, and they never will, because there's no doctor sniffing around us offering us testosterone. There's no supplements in the gym where like, I'll try this new thing. It doesn't happen unless it's approved and the nutritionist or the strength coach recommends something to go to the nutritionist. Unless that thing is checked completely, it's not entering any of the body. So they're not out taking any performance-enhancing drugs, and they've never took any recreational drugs, and they've never took a performance-enhancing drug, so they're not going to fail a test. And if something was to fail, and it was something they ate, then it'd be the worst stroke of bad luck ever, because it's not going to happen. So I think it's obviously you just got to look at who's doing what they're doing, taking what they're taking, and act accordingly. If they don't believe in, then they've got to deal with it.
Definitely, Paul. I really appreciate your time. We've done 35 minutes, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you in Saudi. And I don't know which city I'll see you next in. Thank you.
Nice one, mate. Thank you. Liverpool next.
I told you there would be a moment. Well, guess what? The moment's here. The fight is coming. Let's go!